There are a lot of teams around the NFL that are just a quarterback away from contention, and I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are the poster boy. We'll discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's show, we're going to talk about teams that might be a quarterback away from real Super Bowl contention. We're going to talk about two teams who might not have their answer yet in the Texans and the Panthers. We're going to talk about some teams who I think rosters are underrated in the Jets and the Cardinals, but we're going to start with teams that I think are super, super close to being really, really good. They just need to figure out the quarterback position. And number one on that list for me is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have made an excellent roster. I think that their ceiling is capped by having 42-year-old, 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I really think that if you look at the rest of Pittsburgh's roster, it's one of the best in the league. But having Aaron Rodgers at this stage in his career, they literally cannot win the Super Bowl. I literally don't buy it. So I look at Pittsburgh, Luke, and I said, if something were to happen, I don't know how. Whether it's draft, trade, pick, anything like that. If something were to happen and Pittsburgh got a top half of the league quarterback, a top 12 quarterback in the NFL, I truly do believe that they would be instant Super Bowl contenders with how stacked they are right now.
I feel you. I think the issue is a little bit less just about quarterback. I think it's about the pairing of quarterback and the talent that he has to throw to. For one, the Steelers are going big. They're doing the Darnell Washington thing, and they're going to be a big tight end team. I love that too. I think that's awesome. I love that that's going to be their identity, and big wide receivers. Exactly. But if last year is any indication about how they want to run an offense with Aaron Rodgers, get the ball out quick, avoid sacks. I mean, they were the fastest time to throw offense in the league, and they were certainly not the most efficient.
But that's because of Rodgers, in my opinion. So if you had a better quarterback, you wouldn't have to play that way.
Right. So why is DK Metcalf here? Like, this is a deep threat guy. I mean, I guess what are we going to do? Throw him a slant and hope he houses one like he did in Ireland the one time? Like, is that just going to be the whole point of the offense? Like, I don't really view Michael Pittman as that kind of guy. Maybe I have the wrong idea about Michael Pittman. And
I wouldn't say yards after catch, but Pittman certainly is a good short and intermediate route runner, a possession receiver who can move the chains, and then DK Metcalf. But the thing is, my argument here is not that they are going to be good this year and that all the parts fit together right now. It's the opposite of that. Is if they had a better quarterback instead of Aaron Rodgers, then everything would fit better and it would maximize all of this talent that they have together. So it's like, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, we're just getting there in different ways.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Steelers in the sense of you're right about what you're bringing up, but if they were to do, like, good example, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield could be a free agent after the year. And I think if you put Baker Mayfield on this Pittsburgh Steelers team, that would be a real contender in the AFC. But my guy, Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers, he does not agree. He talked about this topic recently.
There's people throwing out the idea that maybe the Steelers could go and get Baker Mayfield next year in free agency if he hits free agency. And if they're the Steelers and you don't like this quarterback market in the draft or this quarterback class coming up, why not go get Baker Mayfield? He'd instantly make you a competitor. You see the numbers that he brings to the table. But let me tell you why I just think that is not in the cards for the Steelers right now. Particularly because Baker Mayfield is just going to cost a ton of money.
All good quarterbacks cost a ton of money. Does Pittsburgh want a real quarterback or not? Or do you want to pay Aaron Rodgers $20 million a year? And they're not going to be in a position to draft a good quarterback because they're going to be too competitive to be bottom out in the NFL. So it's like Baker Mayfield is absolutely the best chance that they probably have at getting a real quarterback, unless they're going to trade multiple first-round picks to get him. But if they did it, I think that they would be really, really good because I like the rest of the team.
Yeah, why not trade multiple first-round picks to go up? Also, there's like 7 quarterbacks in this class that are supposed to be a thing. Like, you could get up to pick 15 and get a guy you think.
It never turns out.
Didn't they want Ty Simpson too? Like, I don't think they're satisfied right now with this Aaron Rodgers thing. They're just kind of bridging it out again and hoping they can kind of stay alive. That's the Steeler way.
Baker Mayfield would be the Steeler way too, to me. It would be, hey, we're not going in the draft. We're not trading multiple picks. We're going to take something that falls into our lap here, a good veteran quarterback that we trust and we can build around. Like, he would be the perfect solution for the Steelers to fix this quarterback problem that they've had.
It would be the same hope that they had maybe when they grabbed Russell Wilson and hope that, like, hey, maybe we can, bring this guy back from
Baker's
whatever that situation was broken. We'll get the most out of him, that kind of deal.
Yeah, I think that grabbing a veteran, but I think Baker Mayfield's a lot better player than the version of Russell Wilson that the Steelers signed. Like, I think they're at different points in their career, but it is the same kind of idea. But I think that's the best route for Pittsburgh to solve their problems with where they're at, because they're just not going to be low enough to draft somebody unless things go terribly wrong this year. But I think the Atlanta Falcons are another team, Luke, that I look at, and they just have so much talent on their roster. Their edge rushers with James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker, both good and young. They have some good pieces in the secondary as well. So the defense, you can make that better. And then obviously they have some of the best offensive talent in the entire NFL. They just can't get quarterback and coach right. And call me silly, but I believe in Kevin Stefanski. I think that Kevin Stefanski is a good football coach. So I'm looking at the Atlanta Falcons and I'm like, man, they flirted with Lamar when that contract thing happened. If they could find a way to get a better veteran quarterback, they're not going to have enough draft capital probably to move up and do it. But if they could find a way to get one of these good veteran quarterbacks who are maybe disgruntled with their situation, I just think Atlanta is a quarterback away from being a terror in the NFC.
Maybe a terror in the NFC South, but that's because the bar of that division is low. Because I don't see the same, I don't see stacked. I see respectable. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and then that's kind of who you got to throw to. Of course, you got the running game with Bijan Robinson. You got a couple of young pass rushers. But I see some fairly concerning things in the middle of that defense. I mean, you got Mason Smith starting in the middle. What do you got? Who's starting at linebacker? I don't know if those guys are as proven as we want. And I don't think Drake London and Kyle Pitts holds up to some of the other rosters we will see going into this time in the NFL. I feel like you want a couple more options than that, and those guys are not. It kind of reminds me of those years when the Raiders had Brock Bowers and one receiver, and it's like is Olamide Zaccheaus supposed to have the breakout year? Who's going to be the other guy? Who are we going to spread this around to? So I'll give you this though. But I'll give you this, Tyler, that I think they are maybe a quarterback away, but it has to be the quarterback. I don't think they're in a place like with the Steelers. You bring in a Baker Mayfield, and maybe this can work. I do think they need to find a superstar that can elevate all of these guys and make them greater than the sum of their parts. Somebody that just kind of pilots the ship, I don't think is enough.
You know what, Luke? I think that might be fair. They might need more than what the Steelers need based on where they're at. Maybe I'm giving their roster too much credit because I like some of their top end players that I really like at the positions that we talked about. I can acquiesce to your thoughts there and say that maybe the Falcons should not be considered a quarterback away. But there are some underrated teams, in my opinion, whose rosters are better than you realize, who may be more in the Falcons bucket, but maybe the expectations shouldn't be as high for them being a quarterback away from competitiveness. Do want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. We talk about mental health more openly now, but asking for help can still feel hard, and BetterHelp's latest research confirms it. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans and revealed that 85% of Americans believe getting support is wise, but 74% say society discourages people from doing so. That disconnect is interesting, and most people believe support is a good thing, but actually taking the step can still be difficult. So it's worth asking, what help could we give to make that conversation feel more normal and more encouraged? BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 therapists globally and has helped more than 6 million people connect with support. Through a short questionnaire, BetterHelp does the initial match so people can focus on their therapy goals. And if the match isn't right, users can switch to a different therapist from tailored recommendations. That's my favorite part about BetterHelp, is getting matched with the right person for me. Don't let stigma stand in the way of support. Start BetterHelp and get therapy today. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, we're talking about teams that might be a quarterback away from taking the next step. We talked about the Steelers and the Falcons, who I thought might be a quarterback away from Super Bowl contention. Luke pumped the brakes on the Falcons, which I will accept. But I have two teams here who I think are a quarterback away from being playoff teams. Like, I think that if they get the right quarterback this next upcoming offseason, they could be teams that could go to the playoffs and challenge for the playoffs right away. And the first one on that list for me is the New York Jets. And I know it sounds crazy, and maybe I am crazy. Maybe that's why they call me the madman. But I look at the Jets roster, and I see some incredible building blocks. And look, I know that we could poke holes through all of these teams, but look around the NFL. What team is absolutely perfect from a roster standpoint? A lot of these teams have a quarterback who just elevates them a little bit, and then it helps patch up some of those holes. And the Jets have some, but on offense. Breece Hall, really good running back. Mason Taylor, Kenyon Sadiq, a good young tight end pairing. They have two great young tackles, an Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu. They have Joe Tippmann on the interior. I was high on the signing of Dylan Parham, who I think is a decent player. And then look at the wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper, Adonai Mitchell. Like, that is real talent. If you put a really good quarterback with that offense, we'd be talking about that as one of the more talented offenses in the NFL. You look over on the defensive side of the ball. That is where there are question marks. But I like D'Angelo Pons, the rookie cornerback out of Indiana. Minkah Fitzpatrick, a good safety in the back end. You bring in Joseph Adai to go with David Bailey, who already had Will McDonald, who had a pretty good year last year. Kingsley Enagbare, who I think is great depth on the edge. Like, I see a team that got better on defense with some key additions, that has some real talent on offense. And if they had somebody like, Dak Prescott at quarterback instead of Geno Smith, I think we're talking about this team as someone who's competing for the playoffs.
Yeah, and that might be enough for this year for you to kind of discount the Jets. And the Jets have this like forever cloud around them where you don't really ever get to see that much about how good all these players are because it's just Jetsy. And so I super feel that. I think my only, if I can be the naysayer here, my only problem is that these guys are going to start leaking out over time. And so how long do you have to find that quarterback? Right. Just next year, your free agents, Nashawn Wright, Andre Sisco, Harrison Phillips, those veteran guys, you're going to have to replace those and figure out how to get a quarterback. And, the Jets are good enough now. I don't think that they are going to be in that top 5 world unless, people start getting hurt or whatever, anything can happen. So how does this work outside of in 2027, the Jets finally draft the right quarterback? I feel like it has to be that.
That is, they have 3 first-round picks. So whereas we're talking about the Steelers going to get Baker Mayfield.
They had the second overall. They got Zach Wilson. They had the 3rd overall. They got Sam Darnold. Let him go. Like, it's got to work this time. If it works this time, all bets are off. The Jets are here. Time to respect them. But it's got to work this time. And it's got to work quickly enough because you got 2 monsters in your division that are going to be handing you 4 really, really tough games a year. And that's going to be hard to keep all that continuity.
And I
think that's okay right now, but it feels temporary.
We don't know what's going to happen with the Buffalo Bills. But here's what I will say. I am not here to tell you that it will work. I am not here to tell you that the Jets will get it right. I don't know that either, and you could not have faith in that. I'm saying if the Jets did get it right, this team would immediately be a lot better than what people see it as right now. That's where I'm at with the Jets. Will they do it? Probably not. You're right. It's the Jets, the cloud, like it's never going to go away probably, so they won't. But I look at this team, and again, if I could just take a quarterback from around the NFL,
right.
Who's a
Joe Burrow demands a trade. He ends up on the Jets. You got a totally different situation.
I think this team is really, really good right away. And I think if you just stepped into, if I walked into the combine and yelled out loud during media, the Jets are a quarterback away, people would think I'm nuts. But I look at them compared to think about a team like the Raiders. The Raiders are not a quarterback away. They drafted Fernando Mendoza, and nobody thinks that they're ready. The Dolphins are not a quarterback away. You know what I mean? I might almost feel better about the Jets roster than I do the Falcons. I just think that this roster is really good. So will they get it right? You're right to be skeptical, but I guess my general thought is what the infrastructure that they have in place, and then the 3 first-round picks, the draft capital that they have, I feel like if they can just get the quarterback spot right, they're going to, not to make a bad Jet joke, but they're going to take off.
We could see them fly in the sky.
Yes.
Go twice as high.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. But another team that I think is in that same vein, in my opinion, of they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, but the roster isn't anywhere near as bad as it seems. And with the right quarterback, I honestly think that they would be competing for the wild card spot, is the Arizona Cardinals. And it wasn't that long ago, Luke, that me and you were literally doing an episode saying, man, this Cardinals team after another offseason, they could be frisky. They could be frisky this year. We could, and they were
I bought
frisky
it last year. I liked it because I thought they were physical, and then they moved away from that.
Yep, and then they moved away from it. And I'm just looking at the Cardinals right now, and I see Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson at wide receiver with Trey McBride at tight end. I see Jeremiah Love, Tyler Algier, James Conner, Trey Benson at running back. I look at an offensive line that has Paris Johnson Jr., that added Isaac Samalo, that has a good center in Froholt, that added one of my favorite interior offensive linemen in Chase Basantis in the second round. Major question at right tackle, no doubt, but a lot of teams have at least one question mark on the offensive line. I look at the defense. I see a good player who is a good pass rusher in Josh Sweat. I see a first-round pick on the interior defensive line in Walter Nolan, another first-round pick on the edge in Darius Robinson. I see a guy they got for free who could be a top corner in Will Johnson, Budda Baker, who's still one of the best safeties in the NFL. I see a team that has talent all over the roster, and because Jacoby Brissett is their quarterback, we talk about them like they're bums, and because the team themselves, the Cardinals front office, treats this team like it's a team full of bums. That's how people look at it, but I do not agree. I think the Cardinals are pretty woman. I think they're a beautiful woman, a great wife who would do a great job competing for the playoffs if they were just taken a little bit more seriously. And because their own person isn't taking them seriously, they're not going to get the chance. But the Cardinals with a real quarterback, man, I just see a really, really good football team.
Tyler, I think you're on drugs. Are you okay? Is this a cry for, do we need to call someone?
Fear and loathing in the Arizona Cardinals.
I don't buy this at all. For one, okay, so I've inundated myself in a lot of the Cardinals offense for Kyler Murray related reasons for my own show. And yes, I kind of saw a lot of what the issue there was and what wasn't up to like Kyler Murray. And my God, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a screw up. That dude is holding the Cardinals back. He cannot be your number one for much longer. I kind of think that the Cardinals need to realize that sooner rather than later. I am so down on this guy. Genuinely, I trust Michael Wilson more if I want him to get more targets.
Michael Wilson's a good player.
He's a good player, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is not. He's imprecise. He's got drops. He's got screw-ups. If I were a Cardinals fan, I would be trying to ship that guy out for a bag of chips. Then on the other side, like that's your number one, right? Like if that's your number one, you got a huge problem. I don't care who your quarterback is. And on the other side of the ball, that defense runs back a lot of it, right? Like that's a lot of continuity on defense. Do you know where that defense ranked in EPA per play last year? 26th. You need an overhaul.
It's Jonathan Gannon. I'm blaming Jonathan Gannon.
I don't see where on this roster I'm supposed to believe that this is like secretly some time bomb waiting to explode. I think the Cardinals need a pretty full-scale rebuild. Again, sorry, Cardinals fans. I don't buy what you're selling anymore.
I am selling it. I am buying it. I'm not with you there. I like the Cardinals. I like what they're putting together. They're about to get Paris Johnson Jr. $40 million per year. You got a left tackle. You got some wide receivers. Got some
not
rush,
unlike
got
the
some
Falcons.
secondary.
I'm so worried about you if your best receiver is your tight end. Like if I'm on defense going up against the Cardinals, I'm so not scared. We'll zone off. We'll
Travis
give
Kelce
Trey
won
McBride
multiple
11
Super
catches
Bowls
for 4 yards
as-
apiece.
I get it. Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce. I could argue that your tight end being your best weapon might actually mean that you're a good football team. But I understand your concerns about Marvin Harrison Jr. We will see what. Sadly, I don't have a lot of faith in Mike LaFleur.
That Chiefs offense, when it had Tyreek Hill versus when it didn't, and it's got to rely on like Hollywood Brown,
has been different.
Very different thing.
That's very true too. But with that being said, we need to talk about some teams who already are pretty good football teams who very well may have the answer on their roster right now. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, we talked about the Steelers, the Falcons. We talked about the Jets, the Cardinals. I'm getting crazy here in the middle of the summer, looking at teams that I like a little bit more than obviously the consensus. But there's some good football teams who I think if they had a more consistent quarterback, they would be looked at very, very differently. Two of them made the playoffs last year. The other team who we're going to start with is 1 year removed from going 14-3, and that's Luke's Minnesota Vikings. Luke, I look at the Vikings the same way as some of these other teams. Very good roster, very good coaching. Had Sam Darnold in place, took a drop back at quarterback. Man, the Diana Rossini video with the cop saying that the quarterback sucks. You know, she got that directly from Kevin O'Connell. I mean, yeesh, that was rough. But I look at Minnesota and I'm like, if they just had Sam Darnold level of play like we saw before, we've seen what this team can be. Is there reason to think the Vikings are significantly worse than they were 2 years ago? Or am I right that the right quarterback, and maybe that's Kyler Murray, if it is, the Vikings are going to be right back in the playoffs?
Well, first off, I don't need to take any facts from discredited New York Times reporters. Second off, here's the deal. There is this idea, and it plays into this narrative, this nice, clean idea that, the Vikings, it was the wrong guy. There was one bad apple that spoiled the bunch, and it was J.J. McCarthy. He was the only problem. Oh, my God. That is cope. Oh, my cope. The Vikings had so many things wrong with them, whether it was J.J. McCarthy at the helm or not. They couldn't get their subs in any phase. All three phases couldn't get the right players on the field, couldn't get the right players in the right place. There were busts all over the place, whether it was protection or coverage. They were a poorly coached and poorly put together team, and they made coaching staff changes in light of that. So now you got to hope those work out. But the idea that, we get like an average quarterback and I have heard that argument about the Vikings about 25 times. Oh, this quarterback, he's just got to be average, and then they'll make the promised land. I don't buy it at all. The Vikings won 3 games without J.J. McCarthy at the helm the whole year, and I can't and had some of their most embarrassing screw ups with those backups too. I'm into the Kyler Murray thing, but there is a much deeper rot in Minnesota that is going to hold them back until they can look at themselves and reckon with stuff like, we benched 4 starters over the course of the season. They benched 4 different guys that they were wrong about on their week 1 depth chart, that they just straight up went, we got that wrong. Let's put the other guy in instead.
That's not good.
That's not good. They can't self-scout. They have absolutely no idea how good their quarterback room is, as we have seen from how much they've floundered the last 2 years there. I mean, they made so many decisions with the idea that J.J. McCarthy was going to be the truth in the future. If they don't think that anymore, holy crap, you guys got to figure out how good your own players are. How come you're so bad at that?
Yeah.
There is a very deep rot in Minnesota. You get rid of one guy, you get rid of the symptom. I'm sorry, that whole tree is poisoned.
Okay, can we put into perspective, though, that they won 9 games last year? So it's like,
I mean, if you want to say that J.J. McCarthy's 6-4 as a starter and try to figure out what's going on with that, he had his moments. He wasn't the worst thing you've ever seen at quarterback or anything.
Week 1, the comeback, that was nasty.
Comeback?
I was like,
Ice
oh my God.
one in Detroit against a really tough Lions team. He had his moments.
Yeah, that was 9.
The problems that led to that, I mean, there was a special teams gaffe that cost one of their losses against the Bears. If they win that game, they win the division ultimately if all things shake out the same.
Right.
So I get it.
They're not as bad as you're making it sound.
But that talent will be held back by toxicity in the ranks that we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
But you can tell. You can tell that there's arguing, that there's infighting, and that it is not all hunky-dory. It is not all that they were just this great operation that was being held hostage by the 23-year-old that nobody can figure out what to do about. BS. Cope. Move on.
Might not be all his fault. So maybe not a quarterback away for the Minnesota Vikings. But another team
also,
that
they
I
lost
think
like half their defensive starters. They traded away Jonathan Grenard, just didn't replace him. I don't know how they're getting pressure. Unless Dallas Turner becomes the next, I don't know, Von Miller. Like, I don't know what happens.
They need to be right about some of their players eventually is what needs to happen. But another team that I think is a quarterback away from this team, if they had more consistent quarterback play, I think they are in the Super Bowl last year. But the problem is they don't. But the problem is we've seen great play from this quarterback, and it's C.J. Stroud. And he's trying to do things a little differently with the Texans this offseason. My guy John Hickman from Locked On Texans talked about him trying to step up in a different way.
And I remember training camp last year. I remember the first day of training camp, and I'm looking at Stroud, and he's looking extremely lethargic, very lethargic. And then a few weeks later, what do we hear? You guys remember? Lollygagging. So I put those two together, and I'm like, well, C.J. Stroud is the quarterback. How often did we see Stroud command to run it back after a bad play, to get on the same page? I didn't see that last year in training camp. And I think what they're doing this year is highlighting that Stroud is much more in command. So that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing in training camp. Like, how often will we see C.J. Stroud say, can we stop? Can we do this again?
You know when coaches say, like, I'd rather have a guy who I got to, like, settle him down than a guy who I got to get him up. I gotta get him more hype and get him more involved. That, to me, what I'm hearing right there is Stroud is a guy who just naturally doesn't care too much. Not saying he doesn't care at all, but he doesn't care too much. And sometimes you want your quarterback to be obsessive and to be the leader, the commander. If C.J. Stroud isn't that already in Houston and they're asking him to, like, hey, man, can you be a little more vocal? Hey, man, can you take a little more command during practice? Can you demand a little more of your teammates? Like, that's not a natural leader. And that makes me, as somebody who's been high on C.J. Stroud throughout, that makes me a little bit worried about Stroud out there that, you know, we're in year 4 and we're asking you to do that. He may not be the answer at quarterback and to lead your organization then.
I don't want to try to psychoanalyze him too much. I prefer to just stick to what's happened on the field. Unfortunately, with Stroud, I don't have a great, like a super specific take like I do with the next guy we're going to talk about. So I'll keep it brief and just say this, that to that point, C.J. Stroud in the first 7 weeks of the season was the 23rd best quarterback by EPA and by EPA by adjusted EPA per play, which takes out like throwaways and stuff. And in all the rest of the games from week 8 onward, he was 8th best. So he did get to a slow start last year, and the Texans do that.
And then he went to the playoffs
and then they
peed his pants.
Yeah, then they figured it out, and then he ran into the Patriots in the playoffs, and they couldn't hack it, and it was this terrible game. That's the thing for me, is like I feel like C.J. Stroud has shown he can get you through enough regular season games to get there, but can he put together 4 good ones? That's always the thing that holds back these franchise quarterbacks from being Super Bowl franchise quarterbacks. You got to win 4 games in a row against the best teams in the league. And year in and year out, C.J. Stroud has failed to do that after 1 or 2. It's just been like there's been that wall. Have they bumped their head on the ceiling? So how do you get more out of C.J. Stroud? I think the Texans have run back quite a bit. They add like David Montgomery and they add like a safety. But I think they've run maybe a little bit too much back. I want a little bit more aggression and a shot in the arm. I want them to be the team that's going out trying to, trade for Myles Garrett, that kind of stuff. Not a pass rusher, obviously, but that size of move. But the nice thing about the Texans is CJ Stroud doesn't have to be God. He has to score 21 points consistently, and that defense will win you a bunch of games.
Yes. So whether he can be the quarterback that is the quarterback away for them will depend on consistency. Because otherwise, I do like the additions they've made this year on the interior of the defensive line, on the interior of the offensive line as well. I'm very high on the Texans this year. But the last team we're going to talk about is the Carolina Panthers. And they're a team who I like what they've done this offseason. I like the additions they made on defense, like Jalen Phillips, like Devin Lloyd in the middle. They've fortified an offensive line. They've added depth there. They have a good wide receiver in Tetaroa McMillan, good run game. I like Canales as a coach. A lot to like in Carolina, but they still don't know if Bryce Young is the guy. And I think not knowing at this stage tells me that if they had a better quarterback on that team right now, like if you drop Jaden Daniels on the Carolina Panthers, I think they're cooking the NFC South. Like, I think that's a great team. But I just don't feel like that with Bryce Young. And I think that makes me wonder. I just think the Panthers would be a lot better if we weren't so uncertain about Bryce Young.
I think the Panthers have built responsibly, and I respect that.
Yes.
With Bryce Young, I think we know everything we need to know. Ethical. Okay. I don't think there's an unknown with Bryce Young. I think it's tough because he's on the borderline of do we keep going forward with him or not? Yeah. And I do genuinely think that there's like arguments both ways there.
It's Marcus Mariota and the Titans. It's the same thing. Like he got you to the playoffs for the first time in forever. He does some things that have you really excited and you want to believe in him, but the consistency just isn't there. And you know in your heart of hearts, this guy's never going to be good enough to be a difference maker.
Yeah, so I did a big, long thing about Bryce Young in the middle of the season, right after that big Rams game that everybody thought was his breakout game, and I went, I don't think this is going to continue, and here's why. And the reason was there was some mechanical stuff, there were some good opportunities that he took advantage of, but the problems that held him back early in his career were still there when it came to mechanics, and then also some of it is just the way he has to play because of his height. He has to find different launch points, and it's different mechanically when you're driving from the ground from a shorter platform. It's just those guys just play differently. You see it with the good short quarterbacks, the bad short quarterbacks. It's just different flavor, and those things will still kind of hold him back a little bit. And I saw these things aren't gone. He just had a couple of good plays in a big moment, and everyone's freaking out. And sure enough, it kind of plateaued after that. My worry with Bryce Young is that he's bumped his head on the ceiling of barely winning the NFC South.
Yeah, it can't get any better. I think the Panthers
this is now who he is. He made it, and everything else that's holding him back is really, really hard to fix without years and years and years of experience. And do you have that patience if you're Carolina?
Be interesting to probably going to need a quarterback after the season list of teams and whether Carolina deserves to be on it or not.
Who's trading their quarterback? Who needs one? Who's drafting one? I feel like you got like 12 teams that are going to it's going to be a wild one next year. We had a sort of a sleepy offseason this year.
Yeah, next year is going to be nuts. There are going to be a lot of teams tearing it down and a lot of teams going for broke. But with that being said, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun, as we tell you every episode. Thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.